Hello and welcome to the fourth and last game that we're going to analyze in this video series on the domination of the opponent's pieces. We're going to see a masterpiece by Aron Nimzowitsch. We will see why he was one of the best players in the world. It was a victory with black against Enneberg, a game played in 1931, so almost 1 century ago. That's a very long game, 76 moves, and we have only got around 15 minutes, so we're not gonna go deep into every detail, but we're gonna see the most important moments of the game. That was really a true positional masterpiece. So knight f6, well, I did not want to comment too much on the opening, but I may say that knight f6 is a variation that had been forgotten for many years. Well, normally in the game here, white played knight g3. Normally, of course, white takes on f6. And it's becoming more popular now because it's been played, first of all, there has been a book about it. There's been a book about it by Rambaldi. And also, well, and especially it's been played by top players many times, like Carlsen, Maxim Vachier-Lagrave. Actually, Carlsen lost is a non-losing streak of 125 games using that opening against Duda. I do not think he really lost due to the opening. I mean, he played over-aggressive and he definitely got a very interesting position out of the opening. So this is a variation that is becoming more and more popular nowadays. Anyway, let's go to what's interesting to us in that game. So here black played c5, reacting in the center. e5 is also possible with ideas like d5, queen d1, and then knight g4. Anyway, played c5. White gave a check. Exchanged a few pieces. Queen a6, that's a good move. So you can see that white has a small lead in development, so it's a good idea for black here to play an endgame. Rook c8, okay, we're not gonna comment on these random moves, but knight d5 and c4 is already a first interesting moment of course, setting a knight on d4 and then preventing c4. So black basically wants to set a knight on d5 forever. White played knight e5. Perhaps it would have been smarter to go knight f4 and try to exchange this knight, but a knight may hide another, a knight b6, then a knight d5 would come, so it would still be a great position for black. White played knight e5. So white tried to exchange some pieces. We may easily assume that white would have been very happy with a draw in that game. White played f4 here, which was, well, sort of hides or doesn't hide the dream of exchanging a pair of knights, of course, after gf4, knight f4, or even after g4, f5, sacrificing a pawn, and then knight f4, and then a white position would become fully playable. But of course, Nimzowitsch does not want that and is just keeping the pressure with h6. Now king f7, b5, so he's just stabilizing the position totally. And here after white played rook f3, that was a little bit too much for Nimzowitsch, and this time he decided to play g4 and to close the position of the dark squares. I mean, look at this fantastic dark squares, look at this bishop, look at this knight that has no way ever to reach the e5 square. Would it even reach the e5 square? Then we could still trade it for the bishop, but actually it's not even gonna make it to e5. So that's already a fantastic position for black. But okay, if we would win every fantastic position, then chess would be very boring actually. So let's see how Nimzowitsch made it look easy to all of us in a position that still requires quite some technique to win. So first he put the bishop to d6 in order to play h4 and to target the f4 pawn in case white would decide to capture on h4. Now he decided to move his king to d7 since in a minor pieces endgames, the king would go to c6 and either to b5, a4, or to d5, e4. We will see in the game that this was a clever prophylactical decision. Rook h7. Now one would expect black to just play rook cg8, but perhaps he just saw that after bishop g1 is not going anywhere, and he just decided to exchange and to play on the queen side. He probably made white very happy, who thought he is going to hold a draw by exchanging all these rooks, but actually the endgame is pretty terrible for white after b4. King g2 was played a4, and now there are already two big threats. One is b3, and the other one is a3 with the idea ba3, b3. b3, a3 would be bishop a3. So already this is a very difficult position for black. Probably b3 would also be winning, by the way. If a b3, pawn takes, and c4, we do not really want white to play c4, but if it wins for concrete reasons like this one, take there and push the pawns, but that would require some calculation, and Nimzowitsch just decided to win that in a technical way. So he played a4, he more or less forced cb4, then brought the king to b5. According to the commentators at the time, king b5 was the only imprecise move that Nimzowitsch played in the game. However, when you see how he concluded that game afterwards, you don't really want to blame him for that move. But it seems like one very good move was a3, so there is no bishop b4 due to a b2, and bishop a3, and with the idea bishop b2, c3, and so on. It seems that was winning. It seems knight e3 check was also relatively trivial as a win. Just take a pawn and, for example, some line like this, and a winning pawn endgame. After a3, the king has to go back in king d5. Well, that's more easy to say, of course, when it's already been pointed out by people who analyzed the game deeply at the time, since this is a very famous game analyzed by many grandmasters. In my opinion, I would definitely not criticize Nimzowitsch for playing king b5, because after that he really delivered a true masterpiece. Knight e3 check was played. Well, what else? Otherwise a3 is coming, or king takes b4 and then a3. That looks pretty horrible for white. So knight e3 check was played, but now look at this bishop. This is quite awful. And well, it is true that white has no breakthrough on the queen side, while before perhaps he had. But if Nimzowitsch found another way to win the game, he brought his knight to e4, his king to d5, and here he found a fantastic way to improve. He could have gone, for example, with knight d6, gone to a3, so if knight b1, then just bishop e1, if knight c2 check, and king e4, just bishop c1, and the knight is somehow trapped. And this doesn't go anywhere, it seems. But Nimzowitsch found a fantastic move. He decided to triangulate with his king, and now actually white is in a zugzwang. Since after a3 there will be just knight d6, knight b5, and the bishop won't be able to hold the two pawns. A pawn ending would also be totally lost because of this little move a3, putting white in a total zugzwang. So that means white is having to play king e2, and that changes a lot of things. Knight d6, threatening knight e4, king e4, that would be a very annoying move. King e3, knight b5, bishop d2, knight a3, and now white is not in time to keep the bishop on this diagonal, because there would be knight e2 check, with again a totally winning pawn ending. And after bishop c1, knight b1, bishop b2, again bishop d2 would be the same lost ending, a3, bishop a1, the bishop is totally trapped, so beware, the knight is also trapped. But again, Nimzowitsch showed all of his class here. This is really a picturesque situation where both minor pieces are paralyzed. Actually, saying this sentence, I'm just reading what somebody wrote about the game, because of course I informed myself about the game before commentating on it, and this is a sentence which I like, although unfortunately I'm unable to quote the author. But anyway, a very picturesque situation with all the minor pieces trapped, and well, here actually if white was to move, it would look very easy, just play king e2, king e4, and that would be over. But it's black to move, so actually at first it could look like it's white who is going to win a piece, but actually, first of all, no king d5 here, allowing king e3 to make a draw. But one more triangulation from black. There is no triangulation for white, since it would allow knight d2 and then knight b3 and ab, cb, and b2, and so on. So king d1, king d5. White has no choice but to allow the king to f3. Now king g3 and the g-pawn is running, so this is the only try. Beware, you cannot be so enthusiastic and take on g3 and push your pawn, since actually you would just, the bishop would stop your pawn and you would just lose the game. But just take that bishop, a4, and I'm pretty sure that Nimzowitsch calculated that endgame until the end, since here he found this extremely classy move, king takes, king h2, maybe king takes f4 was winning, since then he would get a queen endgame with an extra pawn, but instead he chose king h2 and here entered a winning pawn endgame. So it is just a race. I mean, you basically have to calculate who comes first, but actually white gets there first by one tempo, and this is just a win for black. So definitely a fantastic game by Nimzowitsch. I would have loved to go into it into more details, but the way dominated the light squares, the way dominated the opponent's pieces, then the way dominated that bishop on a1, sacrificed his own knight to get in with his king, and these two triangulations, twice he triangulated king d6, king c6, king d5. I mean, there is so much to learn from that game that I would definitely advise you, since we only spent 15 minutes on it, I would definitely advise you to have a look at it by yourself and perhaps try to understand even more, and because there is really a lot to learn from that game. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this series on the domination of the opponent's pieces, and see you soon for a new series.